An idea how big a deal Winx winning 4 Cox Plates would be in Australia, not only sort of in Australian sport, but the country as a whole. I mean, is that the kind of thing that gets on the evening news?
It is with Winx, yes, Matt. I mean, she's a household name in Australia these days, and as you would well know, she's recognised throughout the racing world all around the planet, from America to England to Dubai and beyond. So, yeah, what she's already achieved, you know, she doesn't have to do any more to prove herself, but she keeps taking everything in her stride. And as we prepare for this Saturday, you know, she feels to us as though she's in as good a form as ever, and you know, we're pretty confident we're going to see her perform at a level we know she can.
So on a personal level for you, this is huge. I mean, you come from a place called Dunedoo, as far as I'm aware, and Dunedoo, for obvious reasons, is pretty famous for its name, if nothing else. The Dunny, of course, in Australia is not somewhere that you'd want to spend too much time. But there are only about 800 people in Dunedoo. So you've come from a tiny, tiny little place to be one of the most famous sportsmen around.
Yes, well, thanks to Winx. But look, I grew up on a farm in central west New South Wales. My parents are still on the farm, as are a lot of my family. And, you know, I've lived the dream of being a jockey for the last 20 years. I've had the privilege of travelling all around the world, applying my trade, and I think the first time I went to your side of the world was in 2004 when I went over to spend some time with my now Irish wife, Christine, at which time I spent some time with Dermot Weld and a little bit of work for John Ox and rode a winner for Kevin Prendergast, which I remember fondly at Fairy House. But yeah, so that really opened my eyes to international racing, and I guess a little bit like yourself, Matt, you live in a little bit of a bubble as far as Australian racing is concerned, and that's how I was before I went to Ireland as a 23-year-old. And I remember Kieran Fallon, who I'd never heard of, would you believe it, winning the Oaks on Ouija board, and a week later the Derby on North Light. And I, you know, being obviously a racing enthusiast and a young guy who wanted to improve and be as good as I could at being a jockey, I'm watching Kieran Fallon and his unorthodox style of extending the horses, and I just couldn't understand how he could get the horses to try like he did, and I was really taken by it, and I guess it really opened my eyes. I mean, the Frankie Dettoris and the Mick Canans, you know, they were household names down here, but Kieran, he wasn't. And I think even to this day he's one of the most gifted riders I've ever seen. Just the way he could get horses to extend and continue to extend. And yeah, I guess from those days, you know, I guess it opened my eyes, as I said, and went back with the opportunity to ride for Mick Shannon, as you know, in 2007. And I guess that was the beginning of where I am now. I think when I left Australia as a 26-year-old, you know, I'd ridden Group 1 winners, several Group 1 winners. You know, Darren Beedman was the champion jockey in Sydney at the time. He was riding double the winners I was. I was sort of second or third on the list, and I took the opportunity to go and ride in the UK. And when I came back, I was, you know, I think I was a much more mature individual, both as a jockey and as a human being. And you know, fast forward a few years, it's amazing how quick time goes, but yeah, fast forward a few years and here we are riding the best horse in the world, and
possibly the best.
Arguably.
Yeah. Maybe not after Cracksman's Champion Stakes.
No, it was pretty impressive, wasn't it?
I think if the handicappers took his run literally, he should be the best horse in the world now, because he was only
it was amazing.
few pounds behind. Crystal Ocean was what, 2 pounds I think behind Winx, and he's beaten Crystal Ocean 6 lengths. So,
well, I don't look into things as deeply as that.
It means you may not be the best horse, unless you slam Ben Battle, which should be in the back of your mind. If you beat her 10 or something, then
well,
you might go back up.
Look, I'm not going to go out there to ride her to try and score the highest rating she's ever run. That's not how I ride. I'll be riding her to win the race.
I mean, it's interesting you say that, Hugh, because like, isn't there in the back of your mind that this is the showpiece? I mean, like, she's always been ridden to just win and beat this opposition she's been up against. You don't think at all now, like, okay, let's unleash her. Let's try all the gears.
what's the point?
Well, it's good fun, isn't it?
If I can beat Ben Battle in second gear, then that's what I'll do. Why would I go into third?
All the background you've just told us is why you're the perfect man for us to be riding Winx, because you can put real perspective on what you're beating here and truly how good she is. Now, her handicap rating, no one can argue with, and she's officially, as you say, at the moment, the best horse in the world, rating 130. But you know as well as I do, back home, a lot of our viewers will say she's beating pretty much, not rubbish, but you'll say they've won all these group races, but we would say, well, look, they wouldn't win any of those if they were in the UK or Ireland. You've ridden in the UK and Ireland, you've got great experience. How good are horses like Humidor compared to the North Lights that you've just mentioned, Ouija Board and horses like that?
Well, I probably didn't have enough experience to be judging a horse like North Light.
You know what I'm asking.
But you know, I mean, if Winx was to go over and take on an Able and Cracksman, I mean, they're clearly the standout horses in Europe. Would she compete? Yes, she would. Of course she would. Would she beat them? How do you know unless she does it? You know, but she'd certainly.
So do you regret she hasn't done it?
She'd but no, she's in the race. Don't worry about that. But the thing about Winx is, her best performances are when she's in high pressure races, and she doesn't get many of those in Australia. If she was in England, she probably would. So I think she'd be well suited to the ground conditions in England. But at the end of the day, we can sit here and argue and discuss and have all the same discussions that we all have this side of the world and that side of the world. At the end of the day, unless they line up in a race, no one really knows, do they?
She's gone to Europe. Which race would you have liked to have seen her in? Which race would you have put her in?
I would like to have put her in the Prince of Wales, the 2,000 metre race at Ascot. That'd be my choice.
Which, of course, the race that Cracksman got beaten in this time around. Tactics is key with her. I mean, if nothing else, it's extraordinary that she's managed to win so many races in her running style, because you know as well as I do, eventually someone annoys you in front of you. It's not you who get beat, someone gets you beat. She keeps circling the field in a race that Australian punters would hate. If that was a normal horse, you've been absolutely slated for the way you ride her. But you ride her with that confidence.
Ride her with confidence, and the thing about Winx, as opposed to some of the other horses we've mentioned, or you've mentioned, is, you know, she hasn't run a rating like a horse like Arrogate or, you know, Frankel, for instance, Black Caviar. But what she has done is she runs at a high rating consistently, and she's done it for 4 years, and that's what sets her apart, you know. And you know, I mean, she can cope with all conditions. She can be ridden inside, she can be ridden outside. If she can be ridden on the pace, she can come from behind. Obviously, her pattern that she likes to race in, like, she really likes to chase. So I like to settle her. You know, where she's got someone to chase, and I tend to settle her back in the field, and therefore I tend to go around them because I start to move closer soon enough so that, you know, she doesn't have to go through her gears too quickly. But I guess that's a pattern that's developed, but it's not a pattern that has to be adhered to. And, you know, that's, again, she'll run on firm ground, she'll run on soft ground, she'll run on really wet ground, and she'll perform at a high level under all circumstances.
I think she's got the same sire as Zenyatta, and it's extraordinary how those two horses like running the same way.
Yes, it is. I hope I'm not in a position where I'm 30 or 40 lengths behind the field.
I remember Zenyatta got beat.
One day, but you know, what an amazing performance it was that day. But look, she was a dirt horse. I remember Bob Baffert actually said to Chris Waller when we were in the UK for the World Racehorse of the Year Awards a couple of years ago, you know, he'd really love to see her on dirt. He thinks the action that she has he thinks she would perform well, but really I can't comment on that because I've got very little experience on dirt.
You've talked about the way you ride her, but that takes arrogance, which you've talked about in last year's Cox Plate, that you rode her arrogantly. It takes bravery, but it also means you must have a clock. Do you know what she can do, say, in the final 3 furlongs?
She can go pretty quick. She can go quicker than any other horse I've ridden, but I don't think that's a strength. I mean, it's a great attribute, but her strength is to be able to sustain high speeds for some time, and that's why I think she'd be well suited to the European racing, you know, because she'd jump out, she'd settle nicely wherever you needed to, and as the pressure started to build, which it does over there, as you know, that's when she'd come into her own, and as the pressure got more and more, she'd be more and more comfortable, and you know, it's what sets her apart. And she can still reel off good sectionals after running at high speeds throughout.
But say you can go, what, 33, 34, 35 seconds the final 3.
That's a big difference.
Yeah, okay, well let's say
pick
34.
One. Okay.
Okay, you can go that, can you, or can you? Can you not? You think you can go 34?
She can, I can't.
Well,
but
no,
she
but,
can.
well,
she can.
The amount of gym work you do, you can go pretty quickly.
She could comfortably break 34 on a normal race.
Let's say she goes 34 the final 3. But Ben Battle can go pretty quickly as well, and he could be your main danger at the weekend.
It would appear that way.
You won't want to give him, like, you won't want to be sitting all this cool stuff out the back 10 lengths off the pace in this Cox Plate, will you? Presumably we'll see a slightly different Bowman on Saturday. And a slightly different
I don't
Winx.
know. Maybe we could discuss this off camera, and you can just tell me exactly how you think where I need to be and when I need to be there. And
I aim to help. I want to help you. Like, I don't want you to mess this up. I don't want to be here and watch you
it's a small
get beat.
field. There's 8 horses, so you know, if I sit last, I'm going to be 4 or 5 off him, presuming he leads. He may not lead, but I would expect him to lead, judging by the field, the final field. I think it'd be in his best interest to lead because, you know, well, you'd know him better than I do, but you know, I think his strength is his ability to be able to sustain high speeds and maybe stretch the opposition to their top, and that might be how he can bring Winx undone. But time will tell. All I know is Winx is very well. She's probably never looked better. She feels as good as ever, and Ben Battle will want to be on his game if he's going to beat her.